What was the nicest thing someone has done for you? When my parents were awful and my sister was passing away, my friend's parents took me in for a while, but they did it in a way that seemed like a sleepover for a few months. I didn't realize until I was an adult how much they stepped up for me. Sounds a bit like what my dad used to do for me. My mother would go into terrible rages, start throwing and breaking stuff. I was preschool age. When it was obvious she was getting started, my dad would just take me for a walk before I realized what was going on. We used to walk around for hours, me just asking him stuff constantly like a toddler does. One of my high school bullies invited me to his house to hang out for a day. I was really nervous it might just be to screw with me, but I was desperate for some sort of friendship, so I went over. We are now best friends and he and his family feels like family to me, and I have no idea how we ever disliked each other. One of my best friends from high school was a big jerk to me, and I was back to him. This lasted almost all of freshman year. This stupid kid was the first person I ever didn't get along with. Not sure what happened, but we became best friends for the rest of our time in high school. He lives out of state now, and I miss him from time to time. I feel like when people are very similar there's a huge potential for friendship, but it's often accompanied by a weird back and forth hatred because you're not used to dealing with someone like yourself. I went to a local breakfast spot after a rough night. Totally forgot my wallet, so I left my phone as collateral and went to my house. Came back and some guy had already paid for me. I know it doesn't seem that big of a deal, but it was a pretty bleak week for me, so it meant a lot. Kinda similar story, where I left my wallet in my friend's car before I switched back to my car and only found out after I filled up at the gas station. Guy servicing the pump knew me as a regular and said it's all good and put his own money at the register. Paid him back the next day plus extra, and now just passing by the gas station gets my mood up. I needed a tire. Only one shop in my area had the size I needed. This was a fairly new shop that I had never been to before. I backed my truck into the bay and the dude comes over. I asked in my best Spanglish if he takes debit cards. He did not. I told him never mind and went to get back in my truck. He stops and tells me THST I can have the tire and to come pay him the next day. This man had never met me before, but I'd go back the next day and pay him plus $5 extra for being a cool guy. When I was about 13, the pastor of our family church heard me practicing chopping on the piano. Knowing my parents couldn't afford it, he offered to pay for my music studies, organ, piano, music theory and ear training, so that I'd be prepared to enter music conservatory after high school. All he asked for in return was that I'd help out with the church's music program when needed, which, in itself, proved to be a wonderful learning experience. This kind, generous man spent thousands of his own money to help me along the way to a rewarding career in music. Username checks out. Yup. My mother died, and I was so stressed trying to find a way to give her the funeral she deserved. My boyfriend went down to the funeral home, made the arrangements, and paid the balance. By far the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me. Here's a keeper. Go marry him. Was about to say this. That was a husband move. You are very lucky to have him. I've posted this before. This is the nicest thing someone has done for me. This was in Seattle. It was late at night and I decided to surprise a girl I was talking to by heading to her apartment, my now ex-girlfriend. It was around 10:30, and unbeknownst to me, the subway stopped running at 11 o'clock. Unfortunately, I was halfway there, and I decided to message her, and she told me to take a specific bus to get to her city. I get on the bus, and I don't have the slightest idea on what stop I should be getting off on. Well, about 10 minutes later, a load of people get off on this one stop. An older Korean businessman sees me and motions to me that there's an available seat next to him. He starts talking to me in English, and he says that the stop where I'm getting off is one stop before he gets off, and that he'll let me know when. We start conversation about where he works, how he learned English, what I'm doing in Korea. By the time we knew it, his stop came up. He profusely apologized to me and said that it was the stop before. I said, It's okay. I'll just walk the opposite direction. As we get off the bus, we are both walking in the same direction. As we come up to an intersection, he flags down a taxi, tells him the subway station to drop me off on, and he paid the fare. All this while still apologizing to me. This is the story I wanted to hear. Thanks for that. My faith has been restored in humans again. Well, for the next 48 hours or so. A paramedic helping me after I was in a car crash took his time to come back to the car and bring me back my front tooth that was really tiny, and he offered to go and look for it in a wreck, and at the same time found and brought back my partner's phone. I don't know his name. I was in such a state of shock I can't even remember how he looked like, but he put my tooth in a special liquid and the hospital team managed to put it back, saving me a lot of money. There was also a policewoman who put a blanket on me and made sure I kept it. The hospital only managed to take it off me right before I left. It was a green standard first aid blanket. I don't know why I refused to let go of it. Again, shock. But it provided a lot of comfort. Thank you so much, guys. My wife and I were driving our kids, 3 and 5 at the time, to the zoo. We narrowly missed being smeared by a semi-truck, but also almost flipped our top-heavy minivan doing 75 miles per hour when dodging said semi-truck. All in all, we were very blessed to have our lives, let alone no damage. The same couldn't be said for other cars, but fortunately, no one was injured, and the other SUV that flipped on its side and was full of kids had no one hurt either. The state trooper that showed up gave my daughter a little teddy bear that she still has to this day 5 to 6 years later. She even remembers getting it, which is pretty incredible for someone that age. I think that was the most meaningful thing anyone's done for me, and I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of good people in my life do incredible things for me. But this one stands out since it was directed towards my daughter, who I was lucky to still have alive at that point. My ex-girlfriend turned me in for stealing opiates. Been clean a little over 2 years now. May have saved my life. So did she turn you in on malicious intent or to make you go clean? It was definitely malicious intent, but it had the unintended byproduct of forcing me to get my shit together. I had really shitty periods when I was a teenager. They still kind of suck a lot, but they were at their absolute worst when I was about 15 to 17. One day, I was at school and my period started a few days early. I knew I didn't have long before I was going to be in a world of pain. But I had one last class before the school day was over and I could go home. And I lived about half an hour away from my school, so I decided it was pointless to call home and have someone pick me up, because I would have had to stick around for most of my class anyway. While I waited for my ride, my school had block scheduling, so it was still going to be a 90-minute class. But whatever. So I just put on a pad and hoped for the best. Not long after I went to my class, I could already feel the pain getting intense. I tried not to squirm or do anything else distracting while my teacher was giving her lecture. But eventually she noticed that I looked extremely distressed and asked what was wrong. Since I went to an all-girls school, I felt comfortable saying that my period had just started and so I wasn't feeling well. Suddenly, the whole room sprang into action. One girl asked if I needed a pad or tampon. Another girl got permission from the teacher to grab mid-all from her locker. At one point, I dashed out of the classroom to the nearest bathroom to puke, and a friend who was in my class followed me to the bathroom to hold my hair out of my face. After all of that, I went to the office and called home to have someone come and get me because I knew I really couldn't wait it out until the school day was over. The secretary let me stay in the lounge area outside the office, which was nice because the chairs were pretty comfy and I was already really sore at that point. One of the girls from my class asked if it would be okay for her to stay with me as I waited for my ride home because she knew I lived relatively far away, so I was going to be there a while. She and I weren't super close. I wouldn't have said we were friends because we didn't hang out in the same friend groups and we didn't have a lot of classes together the entire time we were in high school. But she was really sweet for wanting to stay with me, and so we spent the next 30 to 40 minutes just sitting and talking, which was easily the longest time I had ever talked with her. That day will always stick out to me. It was really touching how everyone in my class showed so much concern for me and wanted to help, even if they didn't really know me all that well. We all need to look out for one another, you know? Kind of similar story. Was in a boarding school so couldn't go home and stuff. Mostly it was just if you're feeling bad, just continue with it kinda scenario. So, anyways, I was having really bad period pains, and I'm not the kind of person to share much. Why, I can't imagine. So anyways, my friend sitting next to me could clearly see something was wrong, and eventually I told her. So she sneaked into the dorm where you're not supposed to go at all during class hours for me to fetch the tablets. Some offered to bring me dinner to my place, so I didn't have to move. Even said jokes and stuff to cheer me up. Laughing at the jokes only made my pain worse, but I definitely appreciate the intent, lol. So yeah, made me go away. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.